The case of Indira Sawhney v. Union of India, also known as the Mandal Commission case, was a landmark legal case in India that dealt with the issue of reservations in government jobs and educational institutions for socially and economically backward classes. The case was heard by a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court of India and was decided in 1992. The case was initiated by a public interest litigation filed by Ms. Indira Sawhney and others, challenging the constitutionality of the implementation of the recommendations of the Mandal Commission, which was set up by the government in 1979 to identify and recommend reservations for socially and economically backward classes. The Commission recommended that 27% of government jobs and educational institutions be reserved for these classes. The petitioners argued that the implementation of the recommendations would violate the principle of equality under Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, as it would discriminate against certain individuals on the basis of their caste. They also argued that the implementation would exceed the permissible limit of 50% reservations, as laid down by the Supreme Court in the previous case of State of Kerala vs. N.M. Thomas, 1976. The government, on the other hand, argued that reservations were necessary to address the historical injustices and discrimination faced by socially and economically backward classes and that the implementation of the recommendations would not violate the principle of equality. The Supreme Court, in its judgment, upheld the constitutionality of the implementation of the recommendations but imposed a cap of 50% on the total reservations in any category. The court also held that the concept of creamy layer should be applied to exclude the socially and economically advanced members of the backward classes from the reservations. This judgment had far-reaching consequences and sparked widespread protests and debates in the country. On one hand, it was hailed as a progressive step towards addressing the historical injustices faced by socially and economically backward classes. On the other hand, it was criticized for placing a cap on reservations and for excluding certain members of these classes from the benefits of reservations. The case also sparked a significant amount of debate over the issue of reservations in general, with many calling for a review of the entire reservation system and for a shift towards a more inclusive and equitable system of affirmative action. In conclusion, the case of Indira Sawhney v. Union of India was a landmark legal case that dealt with the issue of reservations in government jobs and educational institutions for socially and economically backward classes in India. The Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the implementation of the recommendations of the Mandal Commission but imposed a cap of 50% on the total reservations in any category. The case had far-reaching consequences and sparked widespread protests and debates in the country.